and thank you for joining me as well. Awesome. I'm so glad you guys joined me. You guys are two of my regulars and Texas customers and followers, so I appreciate you joining me. Hey, everybody. Happy Thursday. I am Mary from marysheirloomseeds.com, and I try to go live here every Thursday at 5 p.m. Central Time. It's a little cloudy, a little sunny. I've been out in the garden, so I'm a little stuffed up a little bit, so just bear with me here as I get started. If you haven't already, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Now, if you are new to my videos, welcome. If you are a regular, welcome back. I forgot to spray myself down with my mosquito spray today. So if I start itching and rubbing stuff off, just bear with me here. I have a natural mosquito spray that I use, which is awesome. Now, Christine, welcome. Moonblade, and welcome. Today's topic is plant health Q&A. So I have a couple of tips. I have a couple of visuals to show you. I've got some information, and overall, I hope to be able to share some basic, simple information with you that isn't overwhelming. I do try not to overcomplicate things in my videos because the garden doesn't have to be complicated. It's yes, there's a complicated organism event essentially, but it doesn't have to be complicated to where you go, never mind, I give up. So there's no specific answer when it comes to plant health. There's no specific answer when it comes to diseases, only because every garden is different. Every situation is different. So I've had customers reach out to me, and I actually had to print out notes for tonight's video. I laughed because I told my husband, I can give this chat in my sleep. But Catherine says, I'm so excited about today's topic. You are the reason for tonight's topic. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. But at the same time, I like to prepare notes. Why do I like to prepare notes? Because sometimes I get totally off topic and I get to talking about manure when we're talking about plant health. So I want to try and stay on topic, but at the same time, if you have questions, please feel free to ask me. So here's the thing. Catherine, specifically, you asked me about Christine. I talk about poop all the time. Yes, I'm not wearing my Mostly Feral Gardener shirt, but I do talk about poop. Worm poop is one of them. For those of you who don't know, check out KNC Worm Farm. We love them. They're awesome. And they give us a lot of great information. But we're talking about plant health today. So I receive emails on a regular basis. I'm talking about daily about plant health. It's like I get pictures, I get questions, I get a brief description, what's going on. I get some that are just so no information, like my seedlings died, what did I do? And I always try to offer helpful information, but at the same time, sometimes pictures help, but sometimes pictures don't give you the specific information that I need. So generally, if you've reached out in an email and you said, hey, what happened? I probably gave you 3 or 4 different answers just to give you a basic rundown of all of the possibilities, or even in some cases, just some of the possibilities. So if you're one of those people, you probably already know this. Now, one email in particular I'm going to share with you. Please keep in mind, if you send me an email, I don't share your specific information. And I don't share this information to taunt anyone. It's educational. So if you sent me an email and I use this information in a live video, that's great, because you might be helping a couple people, a couple hundred people, a couple thousand people that might watch this video and go, man, I have that problem too. So please, if you do have questions, you can send me a private message on my social media, or you can send me an email. My email is mary@marysheirloomseeds.com. So tonight we're talking about plant health. In the description section of this video, you'll find a link to my comprehensive planting guide and lots of great information, but this specific info you might not find. So I had a customer, they reached out to me and they said that their cucumber leaves and plants were shriveling up, they were turning brown, they were turning yellow, and they weren't producing, they weren't thriving. And so the thing is, there's multiple answers for that. So my response was it could be too much water, not enough water, or a nutrient deficiency. So just like humans, we need water. Too much water and you might be flushing out some of those nutrients. And we need nutrients like vitamins. So that is super important. So I emailed that to this customer and they said, they got back to me and they said that they had a drip irrigation system that was giving it too much water. So they backed off on the irrigation system, and in a couple weeks, their cucumber plants were thriving. Now, yes, cucumbers need water, but too much water on anything can cause some problems. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about too much water. And I actually have I'm going to pull one of the leaves off of one of these plants here. Too much water for me right now is not a problem because it's warm, it's humid. And I try to stay hydrated. I've been out in the garden a little bit today, and it's hot. It's East Texas, so if you don't know, it's a little warm today. So there are several factors when it comes to nutrient deficiencies. So I'm going to throw this out there at you. We're talking about plant health today. Soil or the growing medium is deficient in a certain soil. Hey, Ken Brown, happy Earth Week as well. So it might be specific to that soil. So I have multiple garden beds. Now, maybe this bed is fine when it comes to magnesium, for example, and maybe that one is not. Totally depends. Now, maybe the soil is not sufficiently moist to allow for proper root growth and nutrient uptake. Moisture, hello. Maybe it is nutrient deficient specific to pH balance, and some nutrients are easier to uptake than others. Crazy. Now here's the other kicker. Maybe you have too much nutrients. Now, if you look at marysheirloomseeds.com, you'll find that we do offer some soil amendments, but you will also find that there's no like 20-20-20. A lot of those high NPK, which are the three numbers in the, we'll talk about that too. The three numbers in the nutrients, those are your macronutrients, but then you also have micronutrients like calcium and magnesium. So if you have too much nitrogen, for example, you might have beautiful green growth of your plant, but you will have a lack of fruiting, of flowering, because it is too much nitrogen. Hey, Esther's daughter, thanks for joining us. So there is a drawback to adding too many nutrients, which is why we do not offer and we do not recommend synthetic fertilizers. Everything we offer is natural and organic, or organic for OMRI standards, right? So let me grab this really quick. I talked about this on Facebook this week because Catherine specifically asked about, we've had a lot of water. In 3 days, my rain gauge had almost 5 inches. And that's just for 3 days. We had rain the week before and we've got rain coming up. So some of my gardens, I looked out, I did a little quick inspection. I didn't do a up close and personal. And I was like, that looks a little funny. So this is what I'm going to show you here. This is a squash. And you can see these spots here. Now, if I didn't know what I was looking at, I would say that's a disease. That's not good. I need to remove the whole plant. But because I know what I'm looking at, and I've been doing this for a long time, I know that this is most likely a, sorry. I'm really tired. This is most likely a nutrient deficiency. This is a magnesium deficiency. Can you tell I've been up for a long time? Usually I start my day at 4. So by 5 o'clock, I'm after working the seed shop and out in this heat. It's a little tiring. So this is most likely a magnesium deficiency. I have another one I'm going to show you that is another deficiency. So I'm not going to throw out this plant. This is not a disease plant. But what I will do is I will treat accordingly. So I've already treated last night actually with my calcium magnesium. So in the description section of this video, you'll find a link to marysheirloomseeds.com. If you go to the soil amendment option, there are some water soluble options. Things like bone meal, things like oyster shell, even the mountain flower that I offer, those take time to break down. Whereas if I need a more immediate fix, this is going to be really more helpful if I use the calcium and magnesium that I offer because it's water soluble. And I mentioned poop earlier. If you need worm tea, worm castings, check out KNC Worm Farm because that is a fantastic option for a foliar feed, for a soil nutrient, for a garden nutrient, and it does not burn your plants like some of the other store-bought stuff that's like super high, like 20. Please don't do that. It's just a synthetic fertilizer and it's not going to be as beneficial to your plants. Esther's daughter says we haven't had rain here in Florida for 7 weeks. So perfect timing. I will also discuss that. Are your plants drooping? That could be that they need more water. It also could be that they have too much water. So that's where it comes in, and it can be confusing, which is why I want to discuss plant health today. So every garden is going to be different. If my plants are drooping right now, it's probably because we've had too much water. If you're in Florida and you haven't had water in 7 weeks and you aren't watering consistently, but your plants are drooping, it's probably because you need more water. So there is no like one size fits all answer to the garden. So yeah, it can be confusing, but sometimes it's such an awesome journey that we work with it and we try and figure out what's going on. And as you grow and as you grow from seed and grow different plants, you'll get to know these plants a little better. So on that note, we have 2 high nutrients that I mentioned earlier, like the 20, right? So here's the thing. If you have a Christine says, LOL, I usually ask the plants what's wrong with it. I know, I talk to my plants too. So here's the thing. If I look at this and I go, okay, I have a nutrient deficiency. Another reason for a nutrient deficiency besides overwatering is too much calcium. But I know my plants and I know what I've used in this garden and I know that I did not put too much calcium in here. So I know that it is overwatering. And unfortunately, I'm not overwatering. Mother Nature is giving us a bounty of rainwater. Now, I will say this. Rainwater has more nutrients than your average tap water. So in general, gardens will thrive with rainwater. Hey, David, thanks for joining us. But, of course, when you have this much rain, it can wash out your plants. And what happens is there's so much water that your plants struggle to uptake the nutrients that it needs. That's why I got struggling plants. Not all of them, but some of them. And so I looked around and it's not consistent. And so that's another reason why I know this is not, well, besides the fact that I can identify the issue, I know this isn't a disease. So let me talk a little bit about nutrient deficiencies. Since we've talked about different Mother Nature causes, let's talk about some nutrient deficiencies, Nitrogen. Too much nitrogen will make your plants grow, like I said, super green, super beautiful, but maybe they don't produce the blooms and the fruit that you want. But not enough nitrogen will give you poorly growing and light green leaves. And unfortunately, I tortured a plant enough. I feel really bad about it. I'm telling you. I ignored a plant and grew it only in coconut coir with no extra nutrients. Okay? So this plant is literally grown just for this video, but I will love it and I will give it all the nutrients it needs as soon as this video is over. So let me see if you can get the picture here. Do you see that the leaves are yellow? And you can see that they're not healthy. They're not green and beautiful and thriving. This is a stunted plant. It's tiny, it's scrawny, and the leaves are turning yellow. This needs nitrogen. And part of the reason that I grow in coconut coir is because it's easy to use. But once you transplant or once you it reaches that that point where it has more than just 2 leaves. So you have 1 leaf, 2 leaf, those are your beginning leaves, and then you have more leaves here. You gotta feed this thing because it's nutrient deficient. So this needs nitrogen. So that is, hey Jill, thanks for joining us. So this is a classic example of a nutrient deficiency, specifically nitrogen. Now, potassium is another one. Potassium, you got your NPK, right? Potassium is your K. Super important because if you don't feed your plants, you kind of get some back and forth stuff. Potassium, you will see, again, you'll see stunted growth, you'll see scrawny plants, and you won't have the thriving environment for that plant. Phosphorus is another one. If you are lacking phosphorus, Catherine, you posted a picture of one of your tomato plants, I think, and it had some purple veins and purple undersides of the leaves. Phosphorus deficiency, that's probably what you're looking at. So if you have plants are growing poorly, your leaves are dark green with purple tint. Hey, Melinda, thanks for joining us. Or if your lower leaves start to go like a bronze and start to die off, you might have a phosphorus deficiency. Magnesium, like I mentioned earlier, you've got some mottled and yellow, then reddish, and sometimes those necrotic spots appear. That's what I just showed you earlier. And then calcium, and these are your macronutrients. Your leaves can become distorted, like they kind of curl in on each other a little bit. They start to hook, and then that's when you see blossom end rot in your tomatoes. So all the magnesium and the calcium, I can tell you right now. Hey, Krista, thanks for joining us. You almost missed us. Hopefully you check out the beginning. The mountain flower calcium and magnesium can help you specifically with blossom end rot. David says, I love using mountain flower root boost and other stuff like blood meal, bone meal, kelp meal, and azomite. Awesome. So I mentioned that earlier. So things like blood meal can be used for more of a quick remedy, but things like bone meal, things like oyster shell, those take time to break down. So the time to apply those would be more like a fall situation, whereas your liquid options, like we've got a kelp tea, we've got a compost tea, and then we've got the calcium and magnesium. All those are water soluble. Or if you have access to different kinds of, you can make your own compost tea, of course, but if you have access to worm tea, that is another excellent option that you can use to just fully fertilize your plants. Let's talk about another issue that people face with their plants. Plant health is a topic of conversation. If you haven't already, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I brought another plant over here that has a little bitty infection, but it's nothing major. Now let's see if we can get this for you. See that there? Ah, that is called leaf miners. They will not kill your plant. They can be destructive a little bit, but it's mostly just on the leaf. And here's what I do. Ta-da! Fixed it. Now, if you have a major infestation, you can use neem oil and soapy water, or you could just use neem oil to help with leaf miners. But leaf miners in general will not cause your plant to die. So I will tell you that much. That is another common one where you go, oh my gosh, there's these squiggly things on my leaves. What kind of disease is it? So keep that in mind. What is the shelf life when you make your own teas? Very good question. In general, you can store those properly for a month or two. They get kind of rank, I'll be honest with you. Worm poop, the ladies at KNC Worm Farm can give you a little more information about that, but generally they should be used in a month or two. Hey Inga, thanks for joining us. Now, the items that we offer at Mary's Heirloom Seeds are generally a powder version, and you reconstitute it with water. So if you purchase one of those, you can store the powder for months to years, as long as it's stored in inside the house and not outside. So yes, Krista, they do get rank. That odor is disgusting. But I will tell you that there's some things that you can do yourself, like borage tea and comfrey tea, that are fantastic to add to your garden. they stink. I mean, you're using a um you're using a fermented tea basically to plant your garden. Let's see, let me read that really quick. I went to brew tea for drinking as I'm making some to go with my dinner while I listen. So the tea that we're talking about is for your garden. It's definitely not something you're going to drink. And some of these options, you want to hold your nose a little bit. I mean, have you ever had manure tea? Please don't drink manure tea. But have you ever made manure tea and used it in your garden? It stinks. But some of the most disgusting smelling stuff is awesome for your garden. So just throwing that out there. It's totally okay. You can pretty much use a lot of different things in your garden, and some of this stuff stinks and some of it's great, and I just look at it and go, ooh, I'm gonna have to open this bucket soon and use it. And you're like, oh, just make sure you don't slosh it on yourself, because I've done that several times. Slosh it in your face and you're like, now I gotta take a shower for sure. Anyway, like I said, sometimes I talk about poop. I often talk about poop. All right, so too much can harm your plants. So let's talk about that. I mentioned already the 20-20-20. Don't do it. It's too much, and it's probably a synthetic option for your garden. So worm tea, for example, you cannot really use too much in the garden because it doesn't burn your plants. But if you're talking about some of the other teas that we make, yeah, you want to follow the instructions. There's instructions on literally every tea option or fertilizer option we use. And more is not necessarily better, as I discussed earlier. Hydrating. Now, plants can suffer from a variety of issues, and they look similar, right? So if you have yellowing of your leaves, maybe it's not enough nitrogen. Maybe it's too much water. You will know better in some cases than I will about your garden. So if I know for a fact that this yellow little seedling, this was growing in straight coconut coir. I transplanted it yesterday into a mix of compost, coconut coir, and mountain flower root boost. So I know that while this is yellow now, it will probably not be yellow in a couple of days. But if this was yours, you would know better about what you've used for this plant. So you might know. You just sometimes need to properly identify the issue. Plants can suffer. Overwatering. I already talked about that. I'm seeing it here. And I didn't do it. Mother Nature provided an amazing amount of rain. And so now I'm having to kind of work around that. Am I going to water my garden for the next week? Definitely not. Because I have another 2 inches coming between Friday and Sunday. And I probably won't water next week. There's really no point. There's no sprinklers. There's no irrigation system running here. I am not going to water. Save your water. Heat stress. Now, if you are in an area that is a more moderate climate, you may not see the same type of heat stresses that I do here or that we do here in East Texas. Hey, Green Thumb Gardens, thanks for joining us. 110 in the summertime, in the heat, your squash plants will look like they are dying. They'll be perky early in the morning, because that's when I come out here is right as the sun is rising. If you haven't already, hit the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, please. My squash plants look gorgeous and perky and beautiful. And then by noon, 1 o'clock, they are wilted. It gets hot in East Texas. It gets hot in different parts of the United States. So it's normal for your plants to look a little stressed out. Now, I will say this. If you have a squash plant, for example, that is wilted, it's beautiful one day and it's wilted the other and it's dead the next day, most likely that is a pest issue that is stressing out your plant. So if you see a little hole in the stem and you see what looks like kind of sawdust coming out, that means you have squash vine borers. So there's different stresses for plants. It could be environmental. It could be a bug. So check out your plants, get familiar with them, figure out what's going on, because the pests aren't going to go away. And the nutrient is a balance every year. So super important to deal with that. Kristen says, how do you handle watering in our Texas heat, morning or evening? That is a great question. And it totally depends on my schedule. If I am generally, I like to water at night. If it's a crazy schedule in the seed shop or personally, I will water in the morning time. I've been known to water in the daytime, which is really not good. But if that's the only time I have to do it, I'm going to do it. Lone Star Avenger says you have to check every day for squash bugs. Absolutely. So you'll see behind me this total mess of a garden bed here. That is squash and radish. And these radish plants are really doing a great job of keeping away the pests. So if you haven't already, consider planting radish with your squash, because the radish is already bolting and those squash plants are super healthy. So super important there. If they are, now I mentioned the squash vine borers. If you see the holes in your stems and you see the little droppings, that's where they basically burrowed in. Sometimes you can actually perform surgery on your squash plants, and that's when I use my fingernails. I have fingernails, and I will pry it open and I'll squeeze the little squash vine borer out, and then I will dump a bunch more soil over that to hopefully heal it. Sometimes you can help that, sometimes you can't. David said some use slow drip lines in high heat to keep the soil just moist enough. I have 2 rain barrels working for my container garden. Awesome. So there's a couple of different ways that you can add more moisture to your garden beds. I've seen people use water bottles where they turn it upside down and they're using that in their bed. I've seen people use terracotta pots where they bury that in there and then the water slowly seeps out of there. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. If you are manually watering, it's totally different. If you have a drip system, you can usually schedule it. There are timers that you can buy for water that will slowly, that will turn it on at a certain time and then turn it off. Christine says, what is the name of the squash vine borer resistant squash that you offer? There are 3. You have Tatume squash, you have Tromboncino squash, and you have Seminole pumpkin. All 3 of those squash varieties are squash vine borer resistant. Not to say that they are absolutely positively going to work, but they are more resistant than some of the other varieties. So definitely check those out if you have not already. So if you have any questions, please ask. If you're watching this video on a replay, you can send me an email to mary@marysheirloomseeds.com, and I do try to answer. You can see it's almost 5:30 and it's getting darker now. And it's not really that it's dark this early, it's because it is cloudy and I'm enjoying the clouds, because at this temperature, it gets a little overwhelming for me to be outside. So I'm enjoying it. So we have lots of questions. If you are able and the squash vine bug is in a location where you could soak your vine in baking soda and water, then you will notice it crawling out too. Awesome, good to know. So Krista says you're in the process of moving and starting new and fresh, like the rain barrel idea. Awesome. Krista, I completely understand moving and starting over. So feel you on that one. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. We've got so many different resources here in East Texas. So if you're still staying within East Texas, you can always reach out to me and I can try and help you. So tonight's video is based on a question that I received in my Mostly Feral Gardeners group, and that is about identifying diseases versus issues with your plants that may not be disease specific. So if you look at your plants very well, you might see, oh my gosh, that's a disease. That's a powdery mildew. But then you might get closer to it and you go, oh, that's a mealybug instead. So understanding the issues that you are facing with your plants and the possibly soil, nutrient deficiencies, all of these things can be overwhelming. I will be totally honest. It's definitely overwhelming for all of this stuff. So I'm always here to help. You can send me an email to mary@marysheirloomseeds.com and I will try to help you. You will definitely be hearing from me, Mary, staying in the same area. Awesome. Very good to know. So there's a couple things that you can still plant. Recent question from someone said, I'm way behind in my garden in East Texas. What can I plant still? There is so much you can still plant. Amaranth, cucumbers, Malabar spinach, patty pan squash. The 3 different varieties of squash vine borer resistant squash that I mentioned, you can still plant. Czech bush tomato, super awesome and amazing. And there's a couple of others that I posted that I totally don't remember now, that are more heat tolerant. Armenian cucumber, Suyo long cucumber, watermelons. These are all heat tolerant varieties that you can still plant. Now, some of you, you're watching and you're like, Mary, I'm just now planting because there was snow on the ground 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, or my frost date just passed, or I don't plant out until after Mother's Day, because if you're in a cooler area, then some of this information isn't as exactly specific to you. But again, if you've got questions, send me an email. We've got customers from the West Coast to the East Coast, Alaska, Hawaii, and pretty much everywhere in between. So if you've got questions, please feel free to reach out. Now, for the finishing touches, in the description section of this video, you'll find a link to my comprehensive planting guide. You'll also find a link to my awesome nifty cups, shirts, and my spring 2024 seed giveaway. So if you're just watching this video and it's a replay, it may not still be there, but I believe it goes until April 28th, 2024. So you still have time to enter the giveaway. I do a seed giveaway every week or every month, and I'm super excited to offer it. David says it was 60s, 70s here last week, 70s, 80s tomorrow. It's in the 80s here finally. So it is definitely warming up, and the gardens, as you can see, are thriving. So I'm super excited about that. The greenery, getting out in the garden is always an awesome time for me. So check out the links in the description section, enter the video, and if you haven't already, sign up for my emails. We don't send out spam. We don't sell your information. All we send out is information about growing food from seed and specific information from Mary's Heirloom Seeds. So I am Mary, signing off, exhausted from an awesome week of planting and growing and shipping out seed orders, but it is the best kind of exhausted. Tomorrow I'm going to take the day off. Saturday I'll be working in the garden if we're not having an inch of rain. Inga says we got finally official announcement that there is no more frost in our forecast. Woohoo! I love it. Alrighty, everybody. I'm Mary from Mary's Heirloom Seeds signing off. I'm going to take a break for a day or two, and then I'll be back out in the garden. Send me an email to mary@marysheirloomseeds.com and check out those links. Buy some of the soil amendments if that is something that works for your garden. And if you're not sure, you can always send an email and ask, and I'll try and help you. Thanks for joining me, everybody, and happy planting.